What's going on, guys? Welcome to another weekly tip here. It's Monday, the 20th, June 20th, and we're going to talk about a bait that really saved me in a recent college tournament on Sanford Lake. What I was seeing, what we were seeing was just a bunch of balls of fry everywhere. You guys probably know what fry are. They're just a little bitty bass right after the spawn. We were up north, so the spawn was a little bit behind, so that's why I think there were so many of them up there. And a really good bait to catch those big bass that are guarding the fry is a fluke. I like a Strike King Caffeine Shad, KVD Magic Color always. I really don't mess with any other colors. Now we're going to talk about rigging this up. Now what I like to do is I like to use this on spinning tackle. You can throw it on a bait caster pretty well, but I feel I just like a spinning reel for this kind of setup. You know, it's more finesse. You can fish it on lighter line. You just get better feel with it, work the bait better, can feel the bites a little bit better. So I like to use spinning tackle when fishing these fry garters. Now what I use is I use 10-pound Power Pro, and I'm going to use an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader. So right now I'm going to tie that up, and then I'll move on to tying on my hook. Leader line, I'll usually just grab like 3 handfuls. I'm not really too picky on it. Now I use a double uni knot, and I'm going to tie that up right now. Pull that in down. Then you're just going to want to cinch that bad boy down and then trim up your tag ends. And now what I do is I like a 4 EWG. Round bend's alright. You can catch them on it, but I never really miss them on this hook. So that's what I usually do, but I'll do something a little different. I'll take a pair of needle nose pliers and I will bend that hook up just a little bit. When you're bending the hook up, you don't want to wrench it all the way over, but I just like it so that the hook point comes over the line tie. The whole deal with the Palomar knot is you just do not want the lines crossing at any time. You want the lines on the eye of the hook to be parallel. Now the bait of choice, Strike King Caffeine Shad. KVD Magic's the color. This color works perfect in clear water. Now, when I'm rigging this bait on there, I'm just doing a standard Texas rig, nothing that you guys don't already know how to do. And that's what you're sitting with. A lot of times I'll put the hook back in there, but what you can see with this bait is that when a fish will eat this hook is going to stick out. You know what I mean? Like a regular EWG would kind of point down a little bit, but when a fish eats this hook will stick out. You very rarely miss fish when they eat this thing. It's got a lot of salt in it. It's like coffee scent too. So when they eat this bait, they usually just take the whole thing. When you set the hook, you'll usually get them in the top part of the mouth. Sometimes it'll roll and you'll still hook them in the hard part of the mouth, but for the most part, you're not going to miss fish throwing it on that EWG if you bend it out. And what I was doing is I was watching the fry before I'd actually make my first cast. Sometimes you can see a bass on it, and that's one of the better ones that I caught of a fry garter. We saw him, and we just kind of kept going around him and just pitching it in there, and I let this thing sink all the way to the bottom of that school of fry without twitching it once, and my line just started to swim off, and that was a good, like, 1 3/4, maybe a 2-pounder. So, and that was what we needed. It took 15 to cash, and we had 13. We finished 7th place. And got a really small check, but it was still cool. But this way of catching fry garters, you really need to know how to read the fry if you want to do it efficiently. Especially if you're in the back of the boat like I was, being a co-angler. You can see these subtleties, and you're using the finesse stuff in the back of the boat usually. And you can catch these fish. I noticed if I saw a ball of fry and I pitched to them and they like darted and kept going one direction, usually they were not being guarded by anyone. Or a little bit bigger fry, you can kind of tell the size. There's really small dudes and then there's a little bit bigger guys. The bigger ones were usually on their own is what I noticed. But if you pitched into a ball of fry and the water like kind of skipped and jumped a little bit, but that ball still stayed the same place, usually there was a bass underneath them. And you could let this thing sink all the way to the bottom of them, maybe twitch it through there a few times, then kill it, and one would eat it. Sadly, there was not that many big ones garden fry in this tournament, but you could still get some keepers, and we were sitting in the boat at noon with only 2 fish. So it was good to get a couple keeper bites, even though you got a couple shorts, you're going through plastics. But this technique got us one really key bite. And it happens all the time. You see these fry garters, people will pitch their jig in there, throw a crankbait, you know, whatever they have in their hands. But if you have this little setup ready to go, you can just pitch that caffeine shed in there, twitch it a few times to the ball bait, and then, or the ball of fry, and then kill it. And this thing quivers on the way down, and that bass will come up and eat it, you know. Even if the boat's right there, he's reacting to that bait. He does not care that the boat's right next to him. He thinks something's going into his zone of protection, and he goes in and eats them. Thanks for watching this weekly tip, guys. I'm sure I have an even better one next week. This is just a really good technique that saved my tail on Sanford Lake. So thanks, guys.